Also read a proclamation listing the half-a-decade career. Some of the achievements: he tracked down and located missing children and elderly people. He also assisted in recovering people experiencing mental health issues, including those contemplating suicide. He also showed off his training and other abilities at a demonstration in local schools and youth organizations. Now that Bear is retiring, he's going to live with his current handler, Deputy Brandon Abbott, for the rest of his days. Congratulations on your well-earned retirement, Bear. You made the Doggy Dean's list. Janice Dean, Fox News.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The race to get out. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Evacuation flights have resumed at the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan.
U.S. flights in and out of Kabul were suspended for several hours after crowds of Afghanis rushed the airport Monday. Some were killed while clinging to planes, hoping to get a flight out of the country. The airport's reopened, and Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says they're focusing on getting Americans and allies out of Afghanistan.
Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be as aggressive as we can and moving as many people as we can.
About 6,000 U.S. troops will be joining that mission in the coming days.
Fox's Jill Nato. President Biden Monday said he stands by his decision to withdraw U.S. forces from what he said is Afghanistan's civil war.
American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
The president said he was abiding by an agreement struck between the Taliban and the Trump administration, but former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said
this was a terrible execution of an incredibly important mission. President Trump campaigned on and then for 4 years demanded that we find the path forward in Afghanistan where we got our young men and women home. It was the right path that we were headed down.
Secretary Pompeo telling Fox's The Ingram Angle the Trump administration never would have allowed what's happened in the last few days to happen on their watch. Former President George W. Bush, who initially sent U.S. forces to Afghanistan following the 9/11 attacks in 2001, says he and the former First Lady have been watching the tragic events unfolding in Afghanistan with deep sadness. Stand by for a third shot of the coronavirus vaccine. Pfizer and Moderna recommending it, and federal health experts expected this week to call for booster shots for everyone 8 months following their initial round of vaccinations. America is listening to Fox News.
Circle K brings you the G-Dog. Get ready for a succulent and flavorful street hot dogs made famous in New York City. These dogs are made with 100% all beef and cooked in a delicious blend of spices for a plump, juicy hot dog experience that's bursting with flavor. Visit your nearest participating Circle K and dig in on the best hot dog experience on island. The G-Dog, served from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Available at Anigua, Dedado, and Ocean Vista Circle K locations only. Circle K, hey, take it easy.
A devastating earthquake and a drenching tropical storm system creating a humanitarian crisis in Haiti.
It's a race against time for the U.S. Coast Guard as their 3 helicopters fly critically injured Haitians from the epicenter of Saturday morning's devastating 7.2 magnitude earthquake to the capital city of Port-au-Prince, where hospitals are still standing. Dozens have been transferred this way with various injuries. More than 6,000 Haitians are wounded, at least 1,419 dead after the quake devastated the smaller cities of Jérémie and Lissé, 80 miles west of the capital. The major tremor and aftershocks pancaked buildings, leveled hotels, churches, and schools.
Fox's Brian Yanis in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Tropical Depression Grace is now moving between Cuba and Jamaica and could be near hurricane strength again by Wednesday. In Florida's Panhandle, crews are working to restore power to thousands left without in the wake of Tropical Storm Fred. Gusty winds have picked up again in Northern California, fanning the flames of the Dixie wildfire, triggering evacuation orders for the town of Janesville. Pacific Gas and Electric says it may start cutting power to some of its transmission lines Tuesday night to lessen the chance that blown-down power lines could spark new fires. An alligator handler in Salt Lake City recovering after being chomped on during an exhibition.
The handler, who's worked with large reptiles for years, was feeding a large gator in front of a group when it lashed onto her left hand and pulled her into the water. Two guests jump into the enclosure to help the handler. She calmly directs them on what to do next. The men were able to get the handler out of the enclosure and help perform first aid before she was taken to the hospital. She is expected to be okay.
That's reporter Haley Higgins of Fox 13 in Salt Lake. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahasi.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Looking for a seamless medical trip to Manila? St. Luke's Medical Center's Pacific Islands Medical Referral Package offers a convenient end-to-end medical travel service to St. Luke's Global City. With the package, they also provide assistance in the processing of your air travel requirements, airport to hospital transportation, and hospital room upgrades, all for free. To learn more, call Phil MD at 671-637-5433 or visit their office in Tamuning across the Baltej. At St. Luke's, we love life.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think I said that yesterday, didn't I, Jose?
And every single day we're on the air.
Yeah. It's a really good thing, a really good way to start out a conservative, maybe a little bit libertarian, constitutionally oriented talk show. Kind of tells you where we are, where we're coming from on some of the issues of the day. So we start out with Zemi Ikotny. And I'm not going to spend much time with this one. This is a good time to check your emergency supply kit. The slow and steady approach of the weather system known as 16W, which wavered between a tropical depression and a tropical storm, serves as a reminder to all of us to stock up and recheck our emergency kits. Skipping right down to the end, on Guam, we know the importance of taking charge of our family's safety during storms. We also know that even the most predictable weather can unleash nasty surprises. So there's a list of things that you should do here. You know, listen to the radio and charge up your cell phone, make sure you got a full tank of gas, brush your teeth. I'm not going to spend any time on this.
Make sure you're tuned in to 93.3.
Make sure you're listening to Tall Tales. Don't take the editorial cartoon too seriously. All right. Yeah, so then we go to the Post, and we're going to spend a little time with the Post today. We spent a little time with the Daily News yesterday on their editorial dealing with unity. And yesterday, as something a little different, the Blue Star was not given to the editorial writer at the Post. It was given to Helen Middlebrook, who brought a measure of sanity to a sea of bizarre behavior. Dr. Friedman, the editorial writers at the Daily News, and Post picked up and ran with it too. Their title today is "The Vaccinated Should Be Able to Live Near Normal Lives." Recently, the debate over Wuhan virus vaccination has become more robust. Those who have taken a stance not to get vaccinated, or at least not yet, are getting louder. And so too have the voices of those who want people to take more responsibility by getting immunized with Wuhan virus vaccine. Voices from both sides have made references to their preferred scientific studies or comments from medical experts. In Guam, we have definitely seen the majority of infections have come from mostly unvaccinated residents, as stated by the Guam Department of Health and Social Services. And for the patients who got the Wuhan virus vaccine, we have not been seeing a lot of severe cases crowding the intensive care unit. Months back, when we saw a spike in patients who needed breathing machines and or were in ICU, there was an overall sense of dread and sadness. Prior to the vaccines, the risk of not surviving was higher among patients as they were wheeled into the ICU. Now, even when cases have seen an uptick, our hospitalized patients' numbers have not been as grim as last year. And the big difference, the game-changing factor, if you will, is vaccination. Are you ready? Are you ready, Jose? Give me a V. Give me an A. Give me a C.
Nope.
What does that spell? Vaccination. Yeah. Well, Guam has seen an increase in Wuhan virus cases with a faster spreading Delta variant in our midst. The infections have generally not been as severe as the ones we saw many months ago, when we grieved Wuhan virus-related death after one Wuhan virus-related death after another in the community. Now there's a sense of confidence and also hope generally that even if we might get infected, there's a greater chance of surviving and coming out okay because many of us have been vaccinated. It took courage and trust to get immunizations fast-tracked for the sake of saving lives. Vaccines normally take many years to develop, but more than 104,000 Guamanians understood the greater risk of not getting the majority of our population immunized. So while many were concerned about the possibility of long-term side effects of Wuhan virus vaccination, the other possibly greater and even more pressing risk was that our community would see Wuhan virus spread out of control for a long period of time. While the quotation marks, media quotation marks, are perceived as tilted toward pro-vaccination, Guam experience has been that in general, Wuhan virus vaccination did and still does help our community tame this pandemic beast. Now, why would it be necessary to put the words "the media" in quotation marks, Jose?
Two things.
Yeah.
Let me discuss this. Number one, either they claim that it doesn't really exist. It's a figment of our imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, there is no dignity in stating a media. I found it ironic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That the media is quotating the media.
Yeah. Sort of like it's a slam, right?
It's like air quotes.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Two little marks there. Beginning and the end of the words, the media, perhaps speaks louder than the whole rest of the editorial.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it mean that they're not taking themselves seriously, or that they don't want us to take them seriously? Going on, now in places like Japan and South Korea, which are connected to our tourism economic lifeline, Wuhan virus continues to keep them in the grip of the pandemic. Guam has managed to keep our vaccinations robust, and that might be what saved us. The vaccinated are, for the most part, ready to get our lives back, not ready to get their lives back. We don't want expensive lockdowns. We might be okay with some restrictions, but there should be no more blanket lockdowns for those who got their shot. For those who didn't get their shot, blanket lockdowns are okay, yeah. Just stay home and shut up.
Sounds like they just want a blanket.
Mm-hmm. Having said this, and regardless of what the vaccine opponents say, the vaccinated should be allowed a pass if it comes down to the possible restoration of certain restrictions. If restaurants, grocery stores, gyms, churches, airports, government offices, and other places for congregating require proof of full Wuhan virus vaccination for access, they have every right to do so. But they've got to let us folks with vaccinations in. The rest of you, if you can't go to the grocery stores, well, tough.
They're going to be passing out yellow stars at David.
The government of Guam executive branch and the local courts now require vaccination among their employees, and they have every right to require that as a way to keep our Wuhan virus cases at bay. I'm going back here a minute. Earlier sentence. While the media are perceived as tilted toward pro-vaccination, how would anybody ever get that idea? Yeah. The greater risk is for our community to be full of Wuhan virus-stricken patients who will overwhelm our already fragile healthcare system and our ability to hold on to our loved ones. Secondary to those concerns would be the adverse impact, since Guam as a destination would be shunned by tourists when they are ready to travel if our infection numbers are out of control. The reward for those who risk the possible long-term effects of Wuhan virus vaccination should be near normal lives. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So, taking identity politics one step farther, it's no longer about race, sex, gender. Now it's about your immune system status, right?
Can I cash in on a safe space now?
Yeah. Okay, so the Daily News today did itself better. Ray talked about this morning, and it's worth talking about. This is what the editorial cartoon looked like in today's Guam Daily News. I hope you can, if you're watching Facebook, I didn't print it in color. I'm too cheap to print in color unless I absolutely have to.
It was a cheap shot anyways.
It really was. On top, there's a title that says, America's Most Wanted. Remember the old John Walsh program? America's Most Wanted. And then below that, there are two pictures. The picture on the left is a rather disheveled gentleman, needs a shave. He's wearing what my grandson calls a wife-beater shirt. Others would refer to them as singlets. Once upon a time, they were referred to as undershirts. A sleeveless shirt with two straps over the shoulder. Little historical tidbit here. Clark Gable, the matinee idol of the 30s and 40s, stunned the entire world when he appeared in a movie wearing a white shirt with no undershirt underneath. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
He was almost nude.
Exactly. And then, of course, he really made a name for himself in Gone with the Wind when Scarlett O'Hara, when he dumped Scarlett O'Hara, and she said, "Oh, Rhett, where will I go? What shall I do?" And Clark said, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn."
But are you vaccinated?
Yeah, I just hope that you're vaccinated. Otherwise, you'll be shunned wherever you go. Yeah, so that's what he's wearing, both pictures. And of course, he's wearing a hat, but it's not on backwards, so I guess he's not even woke, right? And then on his right deltoid, he has a tattoo, which is the international traffic symbol for "don't do it." You know, the circle with a diagonal line through it means you can't do it. You can't, if it says P in it, that means you can't park, right? And inside the circle it says masks.
Clever.
Yeah, telling you he ain't gonna wear no mask. He don't need no stinking masks. And then the next picture is obviously of him, a picture of him being booked. And he's holding the card underneath his chin that ought to say his name and some kind of a number. But in this cartoon, it says, "Unvaccinated, charged with killing kids." So I read it really quickly, and when I just read the bottom part, I thought, this guy must work for Planned Parenthood.
Wow.
But then I look a little closer and I saw my mistake. Yeah. Of course, the Daily News would never run a cartoon like that.
Absolutely not.
No, they're like Planned Parenthood.
It's a choice, Bob.
Yeah. Where is that folder here? I got to get it out later on. I forgot to unpack it today. There are so many choices that a woman has. Let me get that.
It's worth the grab.
Yeah, here it is. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. Attorney Vanessa Williams, who is apparently striking for a job with Planned Parenthood, right? No, this is not about Planned Parenthood. Unvaccinated, charged with killing kids. Now, you remember when Gannett owned the Daily News, we kind of got to the point where we'd see stuff like this and we wouldn't even mention it. No editorials, crappy editorials. But then after Kaleo bought the paper, we had higher hopes. And shortly after Kaleo bought the paper, they ran another one as bad as this. And Phil Flores, you know, our good friend Phil Flores, took him on, sent him an email and said, "What are you doing?" And Kaleo wrote back, and Kaleo didn't write back. Rin Radishellis, the publisher of the Daily News, wrote back and said, "Oh, we're sorry. But, you know, we're still tied to Gannett for another 30 days. So we had to run it. We really didn't have much choice. But after 30 days, we're not hooked to Gannett anymore. So that means that they have to take all of the blame for this, and they can't use the Gannett experience, the Gannett excuse anymore. So I'll get to this in a minute about, you know, dividing the community and uniting the community. And that was kind of Ellen Middlebrook's rap in the really good editorial that she wrote. Where is it? Ellen Middlebrook said, I had it here just a minute ago. Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty keeping all my stuff together here. Anyhow, Ellen Middlebrook talked in terms of uniting the community instead of dividing the community. And it's a good point. You know, it's not productive to set up the situation where everybody who has been vaccinated now has a license to be a Karen, an unlimited Karen, and to go around and be super critical of people that haven't been vaccinated. Let's see, Frank Uriarte just chimed in. He said, if many who have contracted and survived the Wuhan virus walking around with their antibodies, should they stay home with the unvaccinated? Good question. Okay, so next, I have a really good column that Jerry Roberts wrote for the Post, and it goes like this. On Friday, in these pages, Dr. Samuel Friedman, director of the Cancer Center, strongly attacked people who have not chosen to take any Wuhan virus vaccines. He described them as ignorant and selfish. I'm unvaccinated, and I'd like to reply. In my experience, most people who haven't taken a vaccine are intelligent, caring people. The majority seem not to be against vaccines in general, recognizing their historical benefits. That said, many are worried about the Wuhan virus vaccines. Proponents claim they reduce transmission between people and should eliminate hospitalizations and fatalities. Initial statistics seem to back that position, but emerging data brings cause for concern. There are growing numbers of deaths and serious side effects attributed to the vaccines. These are tracked on the VAERS, or Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System database. While the odds are still in favor of a mild reaction or none at all, many unvaxxed people see this as a troubling trend. So, quote, safe and effective is a personal issue, and there's data to support whatever position you take. Anyone can get and spread the virus. While the mainstream media is pushing the idea that virtually all the current infections and deaths are among the unvaccinated, other numbers contradict that as being absolute. Recent media reports from communities in Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Israel, among others, have shown that many vaccinated people have been infected by Wuhan virus and can spread it. On July 23, CNBC reported the Pfizer Wuhan virus vaccine was just 39% effective in Israel, where the Delta virus is the dominant strain. On July 27, Dr. Rochelle Walensky of the U.S. Centers for Disease and Prevention said the coronavirus would be just a few mutations potentially away from evolving into a variant that can evade existing Wuhan vaccines. Now, that's what these viruses do, sneaky little rascals that they do. That's why you got to get a new flu shot every year. And in a sense, the vaccinations are a cause of the vaccine, of the mutation, because vaccine, as you were viruses, if you expose a huge number of viruses to the vaccine, most of them will die, but a few of them will live. And those that can handle the vaccine are where the mutations come from. And they don't just hang around and say, well, I should get a certificate because I survived the vaccine. They replicate the way viruses do, and they become the new virus. So in a sense, the more you vaccinate, the more you prompt mutations, as I understand the way the thing works. So that's what Rochelle Walensky said. Rochelle's been on TV a lot. She is the voice of the Centers for Disease and Prevention. Reading it again, the coronavirus could be just a few mutations potentially away from evolving into a variant that can evade existing Wuhan virus vaccines. 3 days later, the journal Scientific Report stated that vaccinated people play a key role in that risk. Wuhan virus can mutate in the vaccinated, which the majority of people may not know. Translation, the vaccinated can spin off a mutation just like the unvaccinated can, kind of like what I just talked about. Therefore, the unvaxxed are not your enemy. Saying Wuhan virus is exclusively the pandemic of the unvaccinated is inaccurate and unfair. A significant number of medical professionals who disagree on the issues of safety, many of whom have refused the vaccine, have quickly been scorned and discredited. While numerous studies have judged the drugs hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin as ineffective against Wuhan virus, many doctors have amassed anecdotal evidence that both have benefited their patients. They were ridiculed. Some were terminated from their positions. The same fate is waiting for any doctor or scientist who goes against the narrative of the government and the medical establishment. Many post articles and videos on social media and YouTube. Many post articles and videos on social media and YouTube, then see them deleted as misinformation. Experienced people in science and medicine, many with impressive credentials, see their opinions censored and are routinely labeled as conspiracy theorists. Big question, is everybody who disagrees with the official Wuhan virus position a quack? No! The systemic silencing of opposing opinions is flat out dangerous. Wuhan virus is adapting and changing, and science has to do the same. It needs ideas to flow freely because you never know where the breakthrough comes from. This free flowing that's what I thought science was all about. It used to be. But I think the whole woke cancel culture has infiltrated the medical profession. So now the doctors who are not medically woke can be canceled. Respectable and talented professionals disagree on many areas of the issue. Just because more happen to side one way or the other doesn't necessarily make it right. Strengthening the immune system, our God-given and broad-based systemic protection gets virtually zero attention from the government or media. Since December, everything has been about pushing vaccines. I'd like to see somebody push vitamin D. There's a lot of stuff out there about vitamin D, but the medical profession doesn't want to talk about it. Treatments were promised. When the vaccines were released, talk of treatments to reduce or eliminate the most dangerous aspects of Wuhan virus disappeared. The docs don't want to be in competition with themselves. Why get a vaccine if we can cure the disease? Dr. Friedman was angry, and anger is often driven by fear. Give him a break. It's understandable for our time. I advocate masking up and doing our best to protect each other as well as strengthening our immune system. If you decide to get vaccinated, I support your decision. Science evolves, and dissenting views propel that evolution. Those disagreements make me dig further for answers. You should too. Maybe one day those answers will lead me to take a vaccine. You see, science demands that you keep an open mind. Finally, let's respect and refuse to demonize people who disagree with us. We're all just trying to get by. God bless. Now here's the attribution. Jerry Roberts comments on business and the workplace daily at 7:20 a.m. on the Ray Gibson Show on The Point, 93.3 FM. I think we can refer to him as our Jerry Roberts, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, I look at this picture again that the Daily News ran. You know, if he took his hat off, it would kind of look like... No, it doesn't. All right, let's take a short break here. We'll give Jerry a break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Pastrami is back at Subway. Pepper-crusted beef layered with crispy pickles, mustard, and melted provolone cheese. Nothing comes close to the pleasure of sinking your teeth into that chewy, juicy, well-seasoned pastrami. It's happiness in a sub. Head down to the nearest Subway restaurant and satisfy your craving for the deli perfection that is pastrami. Subway. Eat fresh. Pastrami sub is available to all Subway locations on Guam and Saipan, including NCS, for a limited time only.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back and touch base with Helen Middlebrook once. Helen got the Blue Star yesterday, and today, wow, I got all my stuff. I must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. I'm really disorganized. So I'm going to give Jerry Roberts the Blue Star for today. Again, something that very seldom happens when someone who is not an editorial writer gets the Blue Star. Yesterday it was Helen Middlebrook. Today it's Jerry Roberts. Unfortunately, the opposition from the Daily News was so weak today. Yeah, but congratulations, Jerry. I'm going to leave this behind in the studio. Jerry's probably going to want to frame this.
I would.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the card. I mean, the semi-cottony for today. And this is what I got on the card. I've got Biden versus Carter, Biden versus the Taliban, Public Law 36-34 versus Solid Waste and Contractors Licensing Board. I've got the governor versus closed-door senators. I've got the AG versus the CCU. And I've got Siegel versus Scalia. Unfortunately, I left my show prep behind, so I'm just going to have to wing it today, but I will come back to some of these items tomorrow because some of them are really important. So let's start out with Biden versus Carter. As you know, the Afghanistan kerfuffle couldn't have been handled in a more ineffective way than the way Biden handled it. Biden said, we're going to get out of Afghanistan, and we're going to withdraw from Afghanistan on September 11. And then they made some noises, but, you know, we're going to evacuate the people that work for us. We're not going to leave them in danger, etc. And the only thing that didn't work with that plan was that the Taliban didn't agree with it. It's only August 17. And the Taliban has already taken over the country. Why they were supposed to wait until September 12th, after we were gone, to go in and take over the country. You just can't trust that Taliban at all.
What'd you expect? They gave us the keys.
Right. Now, Trump had a deal with the Taliban that we would pull out, I think it was in 2022, and that the Taliban agreed that they would behave themselves, relatively speaking, and that they wouldn't harbor any more terrorists within their borders. But Biden broke the agreement. So this is basic contract law. If there's a major breach on the part of one party, performance is excused on the part of the other party. So the Taliban just went in and took over. And I have a good article on that. I have a good article about all of the equipment that the Taliban, you know, we armed the government forces of Afghanistan, and huge billions of dollars worth of really top-notch military equipment is now in the hands of the Taliban, thanks to Biden's ineptness. So Biden figured that, I guess he thinks that he could just run the war by press release. We're going to be out of there September 11. Be patient, Taliban. But I want to mention another retreat that I know about. I'm quite familiar with. In 1950, thanks to Douglas MacArthur, the 1st Marine Regiment was surrounded at a place called the Chosin Reservoir in North Korea. There have been a couple of pretty good documentaries on this. If you ever get a chance to watch it, you want to watch it. It was one of the coldest winters in the history of North Korea. The temperature got down to like 30, 40 below zero. I know a Marine that was there and survived, and he said that, of course, a lot of people got killed, and some of the corpses had their arms extended, and they froze in place. So They actually had to forcibly break those arms.
Ouch.
Yeah. So the Marines were surrounded. The same thing happened to the Army. The Army did what's called a bug-out route. It just completely, unit integrity just completely disintegrated, and they ran for the South. But the 1st Marine Regiment at the Chosin stuck together, and they did an armed retreat. They picked off a few Chinese communists on the way out. They maintained military discipline all the way. They brought all their dead and wounded out with them. Yeah. The 1st Marine Regiment was under the command of a colonel named Chesty Puller. Anybody who's ever been a Marine would be able probably to talk for hours about Chesty Puller. Chesty was pretty good in combat, and he was also pretty good with a microphone. And I'm going to paraphrase one of his more famous quotes when they were at the Chosin, and his S2, his intelligence officer, said, "Colonel, sir, they're the enemy on the north of us, enemy on the left of us, enemy on the east of us, enemy on the west of us, enemy on the south. We're surrounded." Chesty said, "Good. Them SOBs can't get away." That was his spirit. And he turned a retreat into, a matter of legend. Now, look what happened in Afghanistan. If you had the best military planners in the world, you couldn't have scripted a better disaster than this. And, of course, our Carl said, "What is this telling the enemy what your plans are? Telling them when you're going to move out." So the whole thing is absolute chaos. The Taliban has now acceded to our equipment. They are as free as birds to recruit as many terrorists as they want to. Now they can arm them with really heavy-duty weaponry. So I put this on the card as Biden versus Carter. I should have called it Carter versus Biden, because Carter won. This finally took a lot of the pressure off Jimmy Carter. We thought Carter was as bad as it could get. Well, we were wrong. Biden proved us to be wrong. Carter is even worse. That's why I put Biden versus Carter on the card. Biden versus Taliban. It's actually Taliban versus Biden, and the score is about 50-0. Biden didn't score anything out of this. Now the only territory that the U.S. forces hold on to is the airport. He's had to send 5,000 troops back. And the reason they're trying to hang on to the airport is to try to get our embassy personnel and whatever American civilians are left in Afghanistan out. And I guess they got a few Afghani allies out, but, they waited way too long on that. So this is just a complete disaster. And at the risk of sounding like I'm suffering from a case of Schadenfreude, I say this is a complete disaster, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Public Law 36 versus the Solid Waste Board and the Contractors Licensing Board and the Judicial Council and the Pharmacy Board. I don't have the public law in front of me right now, but what it requires since the 3rd of June is that every board meeting must go up on some kind of a streaming media, so that if you want to stay home and watch it, you can watch it, every one. And Public Law 36-34 also requires that when the notice of a board meeting or commission meeting is published, it must not just have the bare bones agenda which has been the practice up until now, like Commission on Self-Determination, agenda, call to order, old business, new business, report of director, executive session, adjournment. So you don't know what's going on at the meeting. You know there's a meeting, but you literally don't have any idea what's going on. So that new public law says that the agenda must, the notice must contain the agenda, and the agenda must be in sufficient detail to put people on notice as to what's actually going to happen. And contract. I'll get to that in a second. And people are always saying, well, there's a good law, but there's no teeth in that law. Well, there are teeth in 80 and 36-34, because the public law says that any meeting, any business transacted in the meeting that doesn't comply with that public law is void ab initio. Okay, let's take a short break here, heading up close to the big halftime show.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Yeah, so I got a quick on the draw producer here who went and printed out that public law for me. So here is one of the key provisions. Notices must contain the agenda of matters to be discussed at the respective meeting. Agenda items must be in sufficient detail to put the public on notice as to what is to be discussed. So when you see these notices in the paper, you can look at that and you can say, hey, I think I want to go to that because they're going to be discussing my neighborhood or whatever, right? Before, you'd see the notice, you probably have to call somebody up. It'd be really rather difficult to find out what's going on. And then a new section 8103 is added to the law that reads like this. Any action of a public agency taken at a meeting is void and of no effect if the public agency failed to comply with the public notice of agenda matters to be discussed pursuant to Section 8107D of this chapter, or failed to comply with the broadcasting requirement pursuant to Section 8103D of this chapter. So that's some pretty sharp teeth. And what's going to happen here? Here's a possible scenario. Contractors Licensing Board story was about the contractor, what is it, KEPCO? I believe that's what it is, and the drainage problem at Marble Cave that everybody's been very, very excited about. And the article says that the Contractors Licensing Board has the ability to find contractors. And somebody named, what's his name, Orsini, is the director of the Contractors Licensing Board. I guess he studied under Mr. Leon, as you were, Mr. Wanpat, at the Chamorro Self-Determination Commission, and he said that the Contractors Licensing Board is going to fine these people, and that they'll do that at their next meeting. And I printed out the notice for the next meeting, and guess what? is not there. Yeah. So this is how it could come down. This is where the teeth are located. Orsini goes forward with the meeting. The Contractors Licensing Board levies a hefty fine. They send a nasty letter to KEPCO. KEPCO says, we ain't paying. And you finally get down to judicial proceedings, and KEPCO says they have no authority to collect a fine because they disobeyed the provisions of Public Law 36-34 because they didn't put that fine matter in their notice of meeting. So we don't have to pay the fine. That's how it's going to work. So the Solid Waste Commission, Contractors Licensing Board, Pharmacy Board, Judicial Council, right? Yeah. All published notices of their meeting and didn't comply with this particular public law. So it's going to be interesting to watch that unfold.
The Judicial Council.
The Judicial Council, yeah. Okay, so then I've got the governor versus closed-door senators. And there was a story in the Daily News about how, yeah, hold on a second. Before I go to the next item on the card, let me find out who I got in the, I got our Carl here. Our Carl probably wants to take a victory lap because he predicted bad things would happen when Biden said we're pulling out on September 11, right, our Carl?
I kind of missed it, but I felt eventually things would go downhill, but I thought maybe in a year, 2 years or something.
But isn't that what you said, that it was a mistake for him to announce September 11 as the pullout date?
Yeah, he basically telegraphed what we were going to do months out. And you know, in all those months, one thing that I find interesting is they didn't have time to pull out all this extremely expensive high-tech equipment.
Yeah.
You know, this AI equipment, drones, you know, these extremely high-tech helicopters. It's really sad. But anyway, I just wanted to add to something something I forgot to mention yesterday regarding Dr. Sam Friedman's comments, you know, saying that everyone that disagrees with him and, you know, for whatever reason hasn't got the vaccine is a total moron. There's some very interesting video clips on a podcast called the Dark Horse Podcast, and it's put out by Brett Weinstein, and he was an academic that was involved in some kind of kerfuffle, not wanting to participate in his campus's campaign to bar whites from the campus for a day. And anyway, he became famous from that. And he's an evolutionary biologist. That's so high-tech, I don't even know what that is. But there's a conversation he has with a couple of other people. One of them is Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Robert Malone is one of the people, he is the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. And he talks about his concerns. He said he's not against all mRNA vaccines. He invented the mRNA vaccine technology. He said, but these two, the Pfizer and the Moderna, he has special concerns about those, and he talks about them there's a channel called Dark Horse Podcast Clips. It's like a 15-minute conversation. It's not that long. But he lists all the concerns he has, the red flags he sees with these two particular vaccines. And this guy is no dummy. He is really knows his stuff. And he invented the technology. But even he has serious concerns. He's given many interviews expressing his concerns and trying to get out his thoughts about this and the potential problems. One of the things that studies have noticed is that, you know, vaccines normally they stay in the relatively localized area around the injection, and it excites the immune system just in that, from being in that area. For some reason, they found that these, I don't know if they're the spike proteins or what they are, but they're a part of these two vaccines.
Hey,
they
Carl,
migrate.
Carl, hang on. Come back after the break and finish this up. This is interesting, okay?
Okay, yes, I will.
Good.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president calls scenes from Afghanistan gut-wrenching. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. And in an address to the nation yesterday about the Taliban's rapid takeover, President Biden admitted
This did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated.
The president said the buck stops with him, but then
Biden laid the blame for Afghanistan's rapid fall on a number of factors, including people like the Afghan military, President Ghani, even former President Donald Trump for making a deal to withdraw in the first place. At the same time, though, Biden actually said his team were clear-eyed about the risks and planned for, quote, every contingency.
Fox's Kevin Corke. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, calls it incompetence.
You look at the intelligence, you look at everything before us, it was clear that not only was the worst case scenario out there, it was the likeliest outcome that was going to happen. And we kept insisting, what is the plan if this happens? What is the plan? And they arrogantly and they smugly ignored it. They ignored everyone who was warning them because they're the experts, they know everything, and now we've seen the consequences.
And Senator Rubio tells Fox's Hannity the Taliban has no fear of the Biden administration. The situation at the airport in Kabul has reportedly stabilized with the arrival of more American forces. Evacuation flights have resumed after being suspended for much of the day Monday. Only days after recommending coronavirus vaccine booster shots for people with compromised immune systems, federal health experts are expected to suggest expanding them.
The Biden administration is discussing advising most Americans to get a booster shot 8 months after being fully vaccinated, including those who received the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The booster shots could start in mid to late September, with priority on healthcare workers and nursing home residents if cleared by the Food and Drug Administration.
Fox's Sean Lanchel. Churning the waters south of Cuba, Tropical Depression Grace has just been upgraded to tropical storm strength once again. America is listening to Fox News.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
More than 1,400 people dead in Haiti from Saturday's massive earthquake.
More than 12,000 homes are gone or badly damaged. Thousands are displaced, forced to the streets or in makeshift temporary hospitals and shelters.
We're on the soccer field. Many people are staying there. Our house is destroyed.
The U.S. Coast Guard also transported an urban search and rescue team, 65 first responders and 4 canines to help search for survivors in the rubble.
Fox's Brian Yennis beginning to today, bars, restaurants, gyms, and theaters in New York City are closed to all but the vaccinated.
The new mandate, which goes into effect Tuesday in New York City, has some people relieved that they don't have to worry about being around the unvaccinated once inside the doors of restaurants, gyms, or museums, while some business owners are saying they're not going to comply. It's a two-part deal to try and fight the rising COVID numbers under New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's Key to the NYC plan, making the Big Apple the first major city in the U.S. to require proof of vaccination in the form of a CDC-issued vaccination card, the New York State Excelsior Pass, or NYC COVID Safe app in order to eat, work out, or see a show indoors.
Fox's Laura Ingle. Meanwhile, the top Democrat in the Senate says federal law enforcement needs to crack down on fake COVID-19 vaccination cards that are being sold online. Senator Chuck Schumer says he's demanding Customs and Border Protection and the FBI team up with the Department of Health and Human Services to launch a crackdown on them and to make it clear that forging vaccination cards could land people in federal prison. Using a fake vaccine card is a federal offense. The Biden administration has filed notice with the federal court that it intends to appeal a federal judge's ruling in Louisiana back in June that blocked the administration from canceling oil and gas leases on federal lands and in federal waters. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Chili's is pairing up premium entrees with 2-in-1 entree selections starting at $19.99. Indulge in mouth-watering combos like the sirloin and ribs combo, the ribeye and jalapeno sausage combo, or the savory sirloin and ancho salmon combo. All served with delicious mashed potatoes. Dine in today and enjoy the best of both worlds flavor experience with Chili's 2-in-1 entree selections. Available for a limited time. Chili's on the second floor of the Two Sands Plaza. Chili's, savor the moment.
Looking for a seamless medical trip to Manila? St. Luke's Medical Center's Pacific Islands Medical Referral Package offers a convenient end-to-end medical travel service to St. Luke's Global City. With the package, they also provide assistance in the processing of your air travel requirements, airport to hospital transportation, and hospital room upgrades, all for free. To learn more, call Phil MD at 671-637-5433 or visit their office in Tumuning across the Baltej. At St. Luke's, we love life.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
So I remembered something during the break I was going to mention when we were talking about Joe Biden's triumph in Afghanistan. It's no wonder we didn't get a good result there. We didn't teach the Afghani soldiers, the Afghan armed forces, some of our own military techniques. They're probably not diverse. They probably don't believe in equity, right? They probably don't have any trannies in their ranks at all. Yeah, it's no wonder they couldn't hold their own. We're so much farther ahead of them, and it's amazing that we didn't do that given our woke Secretary of Defense. Okay, so I got our Carl who's coming back on invitation, and then after that, we'll go to Drive-Through Jack on vaccines. Go for it, Carl.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm adding on to what I said yesterday, and I mentioned about some very interesting, relatively short videos put out by the Dark Horse podcast, which is put out by Dr. Brett Weinstein, who is a evolutionary biologist. Don't ask me to define what that is. My brain would probably explode. But anyway, in one particular discussion, and this is titled "Spike Protein is Very Dangerous, It's Cytotoxic." And this is a discussion with Brett Weinstein, Dr. Robert Malone, and entrepreneur Steve Kirsch, who is doing research on the side effects of these vaccines. And they're discussing about the potential problems. And one of the things they brought up in this clip was about the study that was done that showed, I think it was done in Japan, that showed that these spike proteins, for some weird reason, are congregating in the bones, and I believe it's the cervical tissue of women. And what does that mean? You know, they seem to, you know, Dr. Malone believes there's some potential problems. But you know, what's the long-term effects of that, you know, for teens, you know, and people in their 20s and 30s? I don't think we know, you know, and so we're kind of in the largest long-term vaccine study in the history of mankind. And we've got tens of millions of participants, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, that, you know, with Dr. Sam Friedman saying everyone that, you know, hasn't gotten the vaccine is a total moron, and anyone that disagrees with him is a moron. Well, you know, Dr. Robert Malone was the inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology that went into the Pfizer version and the Moderna version of this vaccine. And as I mentioned, he's not against mRNA technology. He invented it. But he has some special concerns about these two particular ones that he brings up in these conversations. So this just illustrates that, you know, some very intelligent people have read studies and looked at, you know, quote, the science, you know, looked at various studies and information, and they came to, you know, a different conclusion. And, you know, smart people with or without PhDs, I think, are allowed to have different opinions. Last time I checked, anyway.
I don't think people that have PhDs are allowed to have different opinions. And and furthermore, they wouldn't even want to. Jose, didn't we yesterday hear a statistical breakdown of the different classes of people that were not vaccinated, and PhDs were the most numerous of all?
I think it was like 24%
of PhDs are not vaccinated.
And a breakdown of like 6 or 7 groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one that gave that breakdown, and it was, yeah, I'll give it one more time. 20.8. This was for over 5 million person survey put out by Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh, and the people in this survey who could be classified as, based on the questions, could be classified as vaccine hesitant. Here's the breakdown of those people. 20.8% have high school or less education. 18.3% have some college. 11% have a bachelor's. 8.3% have a master's, and 23.9%, almost a quarter of all respondents who in this survey that could be classified as vaccine hesitant have a PhD.
Yeah, well, of course, that still leaves the question open. If Friedman talks in terms of people being ignorant and not being vaccinated, where do PhDs fit in that classification? Are they ignorant? Maybe that's the answer. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm pretty close to a PhD.
Well, you know, one of my favorite Thomas Sowell quotes, economist and social philosopher Thomas Sowell, is that he said, "Intellect is not wisdom." It's one of my all-time favorite quotes. I had it up on my my Facebook page for quite a while because it's pithy and it really makes an important point that just because you have a degree, bachelor's or master's or even a PhD or double master's or a double PhD, that doesn't equate to wisdom. That means you're intelligent within a certain field. And the problem is that some people get outside of their field and they think they can pontificate and bloviate on everything. And
I think, Carl, I think if you're looking for wisdom, the key to wisdom is gray hair.
Yeah. Yeah, if my wife was still alive, she might have something to say about that because I've got lots of gray hair, and I don't know how wise she thought I was. But anyway, I just wanted to add that in. That Dark Horse podcast is really quite good, and the title of that, it's a 15-minute talk. Spike protein is very dangerous. It's cytotoxic. So you'd go to YouTube and type in Dark Horse, one word, podcast, and then that title, and it will, it should pop up unless the algorithms are hiding it for some reason. But I just popped it up, so it you should be able to find it. It's a very fascinating discussion by three very intelligent people on the subject. Anyway, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
Okay, Carl. So we go from the most dangerous man in the room to on location at the drive-through compartment of the nearest McDonald's, where we find none other than Drive-Through Jack.
Hey, Bob, how's it going? Actually at the side entrance of the Circle K.
Oh, okay. Do they have a drive-through at Circle K?
No, but they got a special there that whatever they didn't sell for lunch, they give 50% off.
Cool. All right.
Before dinner, yeah.
You know, I used to go up to Soybean City for lunch quite often before. They're not serving. You don't know where Soybean City is? It's up in Agania Heights. Some people call it Simply Food.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
This has to be a joke.
And I used to go up there a lot, and they'd have a basket on the counter of day-old day-old, and day-old is just as good as today's stuff, and it was 50% off. And if there was day-old stuff, I usually bought it, but I could never make the right kind of arrangements. I'd go up there in a day when they'd have some really nice brand muffins, today's brand muffins, and I'd say, I'd like to make an order for one of those tomorrow, day old.
Yeah.
And they'd always tell me, no, you can't order day old today. You have to come you have to come in tomorrow to get it. I said, maybe you won't have any then. That's why I wanted to order it now. I hope you have better luck than that, Jack.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to breads and stuff, I just look at the tag and I buy day-old too. But I'm calling because, since last February, you stuck to your guns and you've been calling it the Wuhan virus. And I hope you continue to do that, yes. I'm hoping that you add to your card for as long as this pandemic lasts. I hope that you add to your card undocumented virus spreaders versus document virus spreaders. Because that's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Those are vaccinated spread the virus as much as those who aren't vaccinated. And those who are not vaccinated are at greater risk, not those that are vaccinated. So, I hope that you add that to your card, and what you do is you just look at the data that are coming in that support one side or support the other side and say, hey, look, new data in today. And and incidents, like school boards, people getting fired from their job because they're not vaccinated, things like that. Just add it to that card and just put it under undocumented virus spreaders versus documented virus spreaders. And that's the truth right there, because those are people that carrying around those vaccinated cards. They're just as much spreaders as us that are not unvaccinated. And we're the worst case because we're unvaccinated. And so I hope you add that to your card.
I'll give it to the writers, Jack, and see what they want to do with it.
Yeah. So, and then another thing is that, about the cartoon, apparently those people didn't get the message because according to the 2020 census, whites are a minority now. And what they put there was racially sparked, and it was against the minorities. And, this goes back, we discussed this, what about the Constitution, about the Federalist Papers, and it's always been minorities versus the majorities, minorities versus the majorities. And this is what it is, the mischief of factions. And this is where we are. Nothing has changed, really. Politics has ruined everything. And like, what is it, von Clausewitz had said? Politics is another form of war, or another means to do war.
Clausewitz, war is politics by another means.
Yeah, and so we're seeing it unfold, right before our eyes in Afghanistan and things like that. And
we saw something fold in Afghanistan, that's for sure. It was our troops, thanks to Joe Biden, their commander-in-chief.
Yeah, so another thing I wanted to discuss is yesterday was my nephew's first day of school, and he goes to a private school, and he came home. And I spoke to him last night, and I said, "What'd you learn in school today?" And he told me, wear your mask or you'll die. Wear your mask or you die. What kind of message, or what are they teaching when they say things like that? Because kids are smart. They'll see people not wearing masks and they're not dying. They see people wearing masks and they're dying. What kind of message what are we teaching our kids now? We're politicizing this too much. And it's a shame that you have to tell a first grader that, because they're smarter than what we give them credit to. And they ask questions. And it's getting to a point, I mentioned this before. There's this author named Robert Fulghum, came out of a book back in the 1980s, and it's titled Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And he just gave, a few things that you learn. Hold hands. Look both ways before you cross the street. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Take a nap. And there used to be when you used to grow plants in a styrofoam cup. There's a lot of these simple things that you're taught while you're a child that rings through the ages. And now you're teaching a kid and you're telling them to wear a mask or you will die. I said, are you sure you didn't misunderstand it? Are you sure they didn't say wear your mask or you'll get sick? And you might get really sick, and then, you might die. He says, nope, uncle. Wear your mask or you'll die. What's going to happen with that kid? When he walks around and relatives are dying around him, they're vaccinated, they're wearing masks, they're still ending up dead, and he's seeing people unvaccinated, not wearing a mask, they're still alive. How do you explain that?
Yeah, Jack, maybe somebody needs to have a chat with his teacher.
It's not. This is going not just his school. They're teaching it. You see parents in other school boards in other districts complaining. It's just not about the race, the critical race theory. It's the way that we're teaching fundamentals to our children. For them to just, they're at the small, they're very impressionable, but you can't hide the truth from them. And they'll be able to figure things out, but this is an awful way.
Jack, this is my solution, okay? And then I'm going to have to go on to Ann, who's holding, and I got another one in the green room. But tell your nephew that when he comes home from school, he needs to listen to Tall Tales every afternoon. That could be his.
Well, he's busy doing homework.
Yeah. Okay, Jack.
Well,
Well,
Bob.
thanks for alerting us to that. And let's see, I've got Ann on line 2. Good afternoon, Ann.
Hi, good afternoon. So I wanted to comment about the mandate for the vaccine, but, just listening to Jack and the story of, his nephew, I can't even believe that these are the kids that we're going to raise that are going to take care of us. And it kind of scares me knowing that, what are we teaching our kids? Anyways, so what bothers me about this mandate is that they're going to mandate this, and then what else are they going to be mandating along the way? To me, it's just like if they can get away with mandating something that is very important, that I have a choice when it comes to me, my body. Okay, I can do whatever I want to do that may, I may not be the perfect person to take care of myself. Maybe I don't eat right all the time, but the choices were mine. This is not my choice if someone's going to force me to do something that I don't think is necessary for me or I don't want to do.
I completely understand what you're saying, Sam, and I empathize with you. The government, since this whole pandemic thing started, has asserted itself in ways that we never thought were possible, putting roadblocks on Marine Corps Drive, all of the other restrictions, et cetera. And now the next chapter here is everybody's got to get a vaccination or you're going to be a non-person.
But is it going to stop there?
Well, I see your fear. It's what lawyers call a slippery slope. We started down a very slippery slope, and we don't know where the bottom of that slope is, do we, Ann?
Yeah, and that's my fear. Now, when I'm ready to do the vaccine, when I feel it's necessary by just what I'm thinking of for myself, just like any other vaccine or any other medication or anything I do when I go to the doctor, it's my choice. Really, the doctors can suggest it, but they can prescribe me something, and if I don't feel it makes me feel any better, I can stop taking it. No one's forcing me to do it, but I feel that this injection doesn't let me make that choice. So once I've done it, and then you're going to say, now you're going to mandate me to take a booster and then another booster. So for the rest of my life, I'm taking mandated booster shots because this is a virus. This isn't like, we're never going to be able to control it, not in that way. So let's find out what we can do, I feel, to build our immunities than to rely on a vaccine. Because you're saying it's going to work this time, and then you're going to push that narrative for the rest of my life that I have to take vaccines for everything, all the time, for everything. Pretty soon, I might as well just be injecting myself at home. You might as well just give me everything and let me just start injecting myself, because that's what you're making me feel like when I can't make a choice. Choice is going to be so normal that I'm going to start saying, okay, like I said, I'll just inject myself. Tell me what you want me to put in my body. I want to have a choice, and I believe my family should have a choice.
The human body is pinquition. Well, thanks a lot for sharing that with us, Ann, and I think you're on to something there. I know exactly what you're saying, and I think you make some really good points, so thanks for sharing with us.
Much.
Okay. And let's see, I've got AKA Sam, and then I've got Frenchie, but I'm going to head for Wrigley Field first.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Always can help you. This side is our home. To live
Okay, Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark, built back in the 1920s by P.K. Wrigley, the chewing gum magnate. Yeah. Okay, so we've got A.K.A. Sam and Frenchie, starting out with A.K.A. Sam, or maybe I'm mispronouncing it. Maybe it's Aka Sam. How do you say it, Sam? On 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the wrong. Okay. Yeah, I got the wrong line. Yeah, Sam, how do you say
There we
it?
go. There we go. Also known as.
Oh, not Aka Sam, huh? I'm sorry, Frenchie. I hung up on you.
And a couple real quick things. Thank you for taking me before Frenchie, because he's in hard act to follow. And I see MLB, Major League Baseball, did a wonderful thing by having the Field of Dreams last week, and kind of got rid of a little bit of their wokeness. So those are my first 2 points. But what I really called about was, I think Jack and a couple other people earlier were talking about the narrative of what the government or what the narrative is supposed to be with the virus and all this. How my point is how, what is it, the JIC that puts out the report that 1,926 people were tested over a period of 2 days or whatever, and I'm not going to give you the number because everybody on Guam knows how to do telemath. But instead of giving that number, I wish they would just turn around and give the number of people that tested negative and tell them the percentage of that number, which is up in the 96, 97%, and put a positive spin on it. That even though all these people are testing, the high 90% of them are testing negative.
Which method do you think would allow the government to assert more authority and assume more control over people, Sam?
Well, I don't know. I kind of would think maybe Ray would pick up on this and have his baby sister do it instead of just reading the JIC report, and saying, yeah, this number tested positive and this is the core number, but yet I don't even think Mana knows how to figure out what the core number is, which is just an absolute number that the Department of Home Security, whatever they call, whatever you want to call them. But I think that's just something to make them feel like they're superior to whatever, because I don't even think the CDC knows what it is.
Well, this is what I'm hearing you say. They want to come out and say, today we had 50 positives. Oh, man, 50, that's a lot. Instead of saying, today we tested 1,000 people and only 50 were positive. Oh, that's not so bad.
Well, I wouldn't even give them the option of telling us that 50 of them were. I would tell them that 950 of them were negative.
There you go. Yeah.
They're demonizing the numbers when the true numbers are that. Mm-hmm. There's another number. Why don't you tell us how many live births we've had this week as opposed to how many people are in the hospital due to the virus?
Yeah, well, again, my sense is that it all comes down to you fashion your statement in such a manner as to instill as much fear as you can, because it'll make it easier to manage people and get them to do things they don't want to do.
Exactly, but why is the press following that? Why can't the press make it their own information? You
mean the, quote, media, close quote?
Yeah, quote, unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll point straight to Mana in the morning. She just reads the script from the JIC. Be a front runner, change it.
Well, I have a hands full running my own talk show here, so I
understand, Bob.
Yeah.
You get my point. Like you got my point, and I think they need to dwell on the positives and not just instill this fear in us that, oh my God, 50 people tested positive out of 2,000.
Yeah.
Come on. You know, there's probably 50 people in the hospital for other reasons other than the virus.
We had a Board of Education member once upon a time who instilled great panic in the people when he announced that half of our students were below average.
And that means half of them were above.
Half of our students are below the norm. And these are not stateside norms either. These are our own norms.
Yeah, the propaganda machine has many aspects. But anyway, I'll let Frenchie go because he's very intelligent and eloquent, and I like listening to him.
Okay, well, good talking to you, Sam. Thanks for calling.
Have a good show, Bob.
Right. And good afternoon, Frenchie.
Well, hello, Robert. How are you? I guess it's difficult to follow Sam after all those compliments. I hope I can live up to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this whole narrative right now is definitely a distraction from the failures of a lot of the Democratic governors and also of the Biden administration. And beside the attempts to control more power, which I think I will do another call for that sometime this week regarding that thing. But what I wanted to talk about was the dismal performance of the Biden administration in Afghanistan. Now, back in January, I warned people. I said, "Be careful. Look at who is putting who is putting in charge at the Defense Department." The Secretary of Defense had a dismal record when he was in charge of the Southern Command. He actually was so toxic that the person that followed him after he retired took almost 2 years to repair some of the damage, and still the damage has not been repaired. And this is the guy that is our Secretary of Defense, same guy who was supposed to rally the troops and the allies in Southeast Asia 2 weeks ago, and spent most of his time decrying the racism within the U.S. government. So those are the people that are supposed to lead us in preparing us for that exit in Afghanistan. And of course, they are totally inept outside of pushing their narrow agenda on CRT and all that thing. And of course, many people have asked for the resignation of the Joint Chief of Staff, who seem to be totally out of his depths. And he's probably one of the worst military leaders we've had since the loss of the Alamo. The guy is just amazingly bad. Actually, I saw, if you look on his chest, he's always wearing the French Airborne Certificate. And there is a movement in France among paratroopers to demand that he returns that insignia, because he's totally trampling on it and making most paratroopers look like idiots with his performance and his political approach. So what we have now, we had a deal, like you mentioned, between Trump and the Taliban, which was negotiated in Qatar. Now, Qatar is not an innocent participant in all this. It's been the financial backers of the Taliban for almost 30 years, and but it was a decent way for us to exit in 2022, in May, I believe. But then, of course, Biden, as everything that he has done regarding Trump's policies, decided to renege on it, and reneging on a deal in those countries amount to taking away your word of honor. The word of honor in those cultures is something that is essential to any man that wants to call himself a man. Now, of course, in our culture now, where men are whatever they choose to be, that might be a strange concept, but it is what it is, and we've lost faith in Asia because of this, and now we're going to end up with a situation that is so catastrophic. We're abandoning thousands of people that work for us. It's worse than de Gaulle abandoning the Arquis in Algeria. It's worse than a lot of those things like that. And basically, the pictures we are seeing of those people hanging to planes and falling off the sky at the Kabul airport, it's worse than the helicopters trying to take off from the embassy in Saigon. It's a terrible thing. I was reading the Taiwanese media and the Philippine media last night, and, you know, a lot of politicians are questioning if it is a good thing to be an ally of the United States because they abandon their friends. This will have terrible consequences, and it puts us in great danger because it sends the wrong signal to the Chinese Communist government, which is our biggest challenger right now. And we have a totalitarian regime which, if it thinks that we are weak, could take actions that could put world peace at risk. And this is the result of Biden's ineptitude. Now, we all knew Biden was a plagiarist. I think one of the former Secretary of Defense said that in 40 years in Biden's career, he had not been right once on foreign policy. I think we can see that. We can see that his foreign policy is as effective as his southern border policy, which means it is totally inept. And we're going to end up with very difficult issue. Now, you have plenty of Democrats calling for us to take refugees from Afghanistan, but who is going to check if those people are the right people or if they are people trying to get in for nefarious reasons? They cannot even control the Mexican border. Are they going to vet thousands of people from Afghanistan coming in the country? You know, it is like Lou's administration, who is not able to run a swimming pool and wants us to believe she can run the war against the virus. It doesn't make any sense. Those people are inept. They are proving they're inept, and they're endangering us to a level few people even start to comprehend. You know, this is sending a terrible message not only to our allies but to all our enemies. We are pushovers. We do not keep our words. And I was talking this morning to a former NCO of mine who used to work with me back in Africa and retired after his last tour in Afghanistan, and he was absolutely heartbroken. He said, you know, we've lost men over there, we've lost good people, we spend a lot of money to support the Americans in Afghanistan, and for what? For naught. And he was very, very PO'd. And you have a lot of people like that feeling the same thing in Germany, in England, and all over the NATO countries that are thinking, yeah, you know, the stupid slogan of Biden and Kamala Harris, we're back. Like Kamala Harris went to Vietnam with the slogan, we are back. Do you think the Vietnamese want to know that the Americans are back? This is so stupid. We are governed by people that have no clue about what they are doing. Sullivan was on the talk show on Sunday explaining that they had a handle on everything. The guy is a total fraud. He was a fraud when he was working in the Obama administration. He's a fraud now. we should fire half of those people. But then they're going to continue on, and they're going to get cushy jobs in some companies that do work with the House and the Senate. It's ridiculous. People need to wake up next year when they have elections and get rid of as many of those swamp creatures as possible. And of course, all the neocons in Washington D.C. are hiding right now and trying to put the blame on everybody else, but it is their fault because we took what was the most brilliant anti-terrorist operation when we got rid of the Taliban with the CIA and the allies of the Northern Alliance, and when what's his name, Junior, decided to do regime change in Afghanistan and decided that we're going to stay, and we've been there for 20 years, and look at the result. And look at all the veterans. Over 60,000 veterans from Afghan and Iraq have committed suicide. It's almost as many people that died in the Vietnam War. It's shameful, and it's totally reprehensible. And but I'm afraid that the people that are in charge are going to get away scot-free, and they should be really. Especially some of the generals should be brought to court-martial, because look at the treasury, the blood that we spent over there for nothing. And thanks to Joe Biden, Carter had us lost. He abandoned Taiwan, he abandoned the Philippines, and closed the bases there. He gave away the Panama Canal. He abandoned the Shah of Iran and allowed the mullah to arrive there. And we're still dealing with those terrible decisions. And what is Biden going to leave us with? It's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling.
Well, very well stated, Frenchie, as usual. And I wish there were some good news in here somewhere, but there really isn't any, is there?
No, and really, what I'm warning is be careful, because this shows weakness, and we have many enemies, and this is sending the wrong signal to our enemies that we are weak right now, and we are not going to fight back. And this is one of the worst situations we could be in.
I understand that Biden has asked that a new shoulder patch be designed for members of the Army. Yeah, a paper tiger.
A paper tiger. Well, this is what the North Vietnamese used to call us during the Vietnam War, right?
Paper tigers.
Paper tigers, yeah. Thanks to Jane Fonda and all the leftists of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like the more it changes, the more it stays the same, right?
Seems like it, Frenchie.
All right. Well, you have a good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Frenchie always comes with a full load, doesn't he?
I didn't know he served in Africa.
Yeah,
you learned a lot.
He was in the French Army.
No kidding.
Yeah. He's done a lot of stuff. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs and the home stretch of Tall Tales.
Mescla, read all about it. Check out Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tucumán for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet, the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán, Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and si Tu'us Ma'ase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Okay, here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. We're starting on the home stretch of Tall Tales for Tuesday here in August. And the next item on the card is governor versus closed-door senators. You remember a couple months ago, the governor set up a meeting she invited all 15 of the senators down to Adelup, where they were going to talk about how they were going to budget and what they were going to use all of the money flowing from the national government, how they were going to use that. And she wanted to hear how the senators wanted to spend it. So of 15 senators, 14 went to this meeting. One of them didn't, Joanne Brown, the only smart one of the bunch. When they got down there, they were all seated and the doors were closed and the media was shut out. The media, being good little boys and girls, just waited patiently outside.
The media?
Yeah. Yeah, quote unquote, right? Yeah. And thought this is perfectly fine. Why can't public officials, when they're discussing public business, why can't they meet behind closed doors? What's wrong with that? Pretty sad. So they had their meeting, and my analysis was, well, Lou played them all, because she got them to unburden what it was that they wanted to do. And what did Lou say? Nothing. What did she disclose? Nothing. And in today's paper, there's a story that she's still not going to tell them what she's going to do with the money coming from the national government.
Denied.
Yeah. So that's all we need. And that's the reason why senators, you should never go to a closed-door meeting, because there was no downside risk for Lou whatsoever. Nobody criticized her for going to a closed-door meeting because there's only one of her. But you are a body corporate. You are your decision-making process involves multiple people. So she really fooled you. She sucked you into doing something that got you criticized. She said, let's play poker, but I want you to turn all your hole cards over before we start. I'm not going to show you mine. She picked your brains, whatever is in there. And then from then on, she hasn't said anything, and she still hasn't said anything. And now you're complaining, well, we got to do a budget, but we don't know what she's going to do with all of that pandemic money coming from D.C. So nice going, closed-door senators. That's that item on the card. Next item I have on the card is the AG versus the CCU. And you'll recall that the CCU back in 2018 decided that they could give raises, salary increases in executive session. Although the law is very clear on that. It is not worded in negatively. It doesn't say, or positively, it doesn't say something like all important business shall be conducted in open session. It says under no circumstances do you discuss salary in executive session. So that's exactly what they did. But of course they didn't have lawyers. They didn't have a lawyer. They didn't have a lawyer. They had two who sat in on that executive session, both of whom got raises. And the newspaper reporter that covered it just put that in the paper. Oh, yeah, they gave these raises in executive session, and I think it was October 2018. Somebody, of course, got a hold of that and made an issue out of it. Who would that have been, Jose, that made an issue out of that? Yeah.
Here's looking at you.
Yeah. And as it turned out, they broke they violated the open government law. The public auditor was attracted to it. He investigated, found out that they had been breaking the open government law for years, and he stuck them with one and told them that they are going to have to, there would be some fines and some costs involved. The latest story is that the AG and the CCU are engaging in settlement negotiations. So I'm going to watch that very carefully. And it just brought back to my attention that one of the lawyers involved, a certain Kelly Clark, counsel for the waterworks, got a pretty sizable raise. And when it came down that all of the people that got the raises would have to pay the raises back, he was really magnanimous. He agreed to pay his the $4,000 or $5,000 raise back $25 a payday, which means it'll take him 7 years to pay it off. There was an announcement in the paper that the waterworks is looking for counsel. Oh, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, Kelly Clark is gone. I don't know if he still has a relationship with the CCU, but he's no longer counsel for the waterworks because they're hiring a new lawyer. So in a rational world, when it came time for him to settle, he'd have to pay the money back that he owed. So just to find out, I sent a sunshine to find out how much of that money was owed and how much has been collected and et cetera. But that was a really dark chapter in the history of the CCU. And you know that I've been a booster of the CCU. I went to the last Chamber of Commerce meeting. John Beneventi, the general manager of the Power Authority, put on a dynamite PowerPoint presentation. And I hate PowerPoint. But they have really extensive and intensive plans as to how to take us from where we are to using as much renewable energy as is possible on a tropical island. They've done a fine job of planning. They know what's going to happen next year, and I think on down to like 2035. So I was really impressed. They've done a lot of really impressive things. And I contrast the CCU with the way the utilities were run before 2001. There's just no comparison. Power hardly ever goes off now. Back in the old days, every day, load shedding, the load shedding blues, etc. We had a special arrangement so that when you turned on your water faucet, something called hanumtaki would come out.
I know that's your word.
Cultural preservation, hanumtaki. So I hope that this settlement winds up in such a manner that it stings. Because if it doesn't sting, it's going to happen again. And if it doesn't sting, it won't be much of a lesson to other agencies like the Commission on Chamorro Independence, for example. So that kind of brings me to the end of my card. I got one more item on my card called Siegel versus Scalia, where a law professor tells us what a bad Justice Scalia was. And most of the things that Siegel criticizes Scalia for are things that conservatives praise him for.
Go figure.
Yeah, so I don't want to go into that until I've actually got it in front of me. So what do I got, 2 minutes to go, Jose?
Like about 30 seconds again.
30 seconds. So I guess my timing was pretty good. I wound up with things to talk about just at the end of the show. So, of course, we'll be back again tomorrow with another exciting, informational, educational episode of Tall Tales with some of the greatest music on talk radio. There's Ravel's Bolero.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Taliban urges calm. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Perhaps realizing they suddenly have a country to run, the Taliban is offering amnesty for everyone in Afghanistan and urges people, including women, to return to work, even as there are reports that insurgents have been going door to door looking for people who worked with coalition forces. Military flights are taking off again from the airport in Kabul, carrying diplomats and civilians out of the country. The flights had been suspended yesterday amid chaos at the airport, but the tarmac has now been cleared of thousands of Afghanis desperate to leave the country. President Biden has ordered thousands more troops in to assist in the evacuations, but with a warning.
We have made it clear to the Taliban, if they attack our personnel or disrupt our operation, the U.S. presence will be swift and the response will be swift and forceful.
President Biden is the one that needs to be.
The president says he stands behind his decision to withdraw American forces, leading to the Taliban's rapid takeover. But Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell calls it an unmitigated disaster, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo tells Fox's The Ingram Angle.
President Biden is the one that needs to be held accountable for what's taking place in Afghanistan today and anything that befalls the United States as a result of the decisions he made on the way he executed this withdrawal in such a hasty, unplanned way that upended so much of the good work that had already been done.
About the president blaming the Trump administration for negotiating the withdrawal of U.S. forces, Secretary Pompeo says the Taliban broke that agreement months ago and the Biden team wasn't bound by it. Federal health experts will recommend, as early as this week, coronavirus vaccination booster shots for everyone, 8 months after being completely inoculated. Pfizer and BioNTech says their clinical trials show a third shot would boost immunity. The boosters are currently only recommended for those with compromised immune systems. America.